But of today on Locked On Texas Tech, the Red Raiders are back to dancing, but who's the dance partner? Well, it's America's belle of the ball.
You are Locked On Texas Tech, your daily podcast on the Texas Tech Red Raiders, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
We're going to start this thing off right. Raider! Everything runs through Lubbock.
Great to be with you again on Locked On Texas Tech on the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day, always free and available on YouTube or anywhere you get podcasts. And today's episode brought to you by LinkedIn Jobs. These days, every new potential hire can feel like a high-stakes wager for your small business, and that's why LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the right people for your team faster and for free. So post your job for free today at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. Terms and conditions apply. With the only Chris Level, I'm Casey Cowan. Chris, great to see you again, kicking off a brand new week, not just any other week. The madness is almost upon us. NCAA tournament right around the corner. You probably know by now, Texas Tech headed to Pittsburgh, PA, as the 6th seed to take on the 11th seed Wolfpack of North Carolina State. Before we get down and dirty with the matchup, Chris, and how we feel about the draw, obviously coming into this year, a new era with a new head coach, new staff with Grant McCasland and company. And I'm having to pinch myself a little bit as a Tech fan just to remind myself this is not a dream. You did wind up as not only an NCAA tournament qualifier, but a 6th seed. Some had you pegged even a little higher than that. Obviously, we know what the finish was in the Big 12 Conference, and just doing my best not to take for granted, do not pardon any puns, deal with them, it'll be good for you. What this season has been, round one for Coach McCasland and the Red Raiders, definitely better than I could have imagined, I think.
Yeah, it's easy to talk about like this being the standard for this program every year, and I think that's obviously the goal. But it's easier said than done, and maintaining stability, maintaining your level of success, especially considering the league that you're in and the way that the portal is working, and there's so much change and turnover, and then you have something just kind of blow up in your face like a year ago, and you're just not sure how long it's going to take. But thankfully, the portal was there, and you took advantage of it and made the absolute right hire. And I think it's been fun to watch them maneuver through a tricky season with their own roster and with the injuries that they've had that they're still dealing with, and yet just still have a lot of success because they were a no-brainer. Like you woke up stress-free on Selection Sunday. There was no – things aren't as calm in Manhattan, Kansas, or Norman, Oklahoma, places like that. There was a time when UCF and Cincinnati thought they would be in, but you were, even I think TCU was kind of like, there was a bit of stress probably around Fort Worth yesterday before they were announced because they were one of the lower seeded Big 12 teams. But it just speaks to the kind of the year, and you just wonder, okay, where can we take it from now? Not just in this tournament, but where can you take it going forward? Because now, guess what? This is the expectation.
Yeah, and I think it's definitely a fair expectation for this kind of basketball program, and would love to dream of days where the standards is even beyond just getting to the tournament. But no doubt a pat on the back deserved for Coach McCasland and his staff to navigate through this season in the way that they did. I mean, if you had been a healthy basketball team, it still would have been a big challenge. But as you mentioned there, you had other challenges outside the lines as well that are out of your control. You got players like swapping boots. I don't know if anybody noticed at NCAA selection party at United Supermarkets Arena. The bootless Warren Washington and the booted Darion Williams. Now it's Thursday night. I think they're tipping off, around midnight on Thursday night from Pittsburgh. You're going to be around an 8:45 scheduled Central Time tip-off, and you know how scheduled goes when you're talking about the NCAA tournament, so it'll be a late one. There's no doubt about that. So you've got as much time as you could probably hope for as far as getting some of these guys to feeling better. But that was a development that did not go unnoticed by the Red Raider faithful, that you had, a little bit of a boot shuffle between two impact players.
Yeah, and if I'm just going to speculate on this without knowing, exactly the percentages guys are at, everything like that, I'd be willing to bet by Thursday Darion Williams is fine, and Warren is still questionable. There's nothing that in my mind changes the way that they went into that, well, let's say BYU game last week, at the Big 12 tournament. I think Darion's situation, I think Darion would have played had you had a day in between those games between BYU and ended up having to play, Houston. I think that he would have been able to play, but just it was too quick of a turnaround. And a lot of times boots are strictly precaution.
Yeah.
And it's just trying to protect you from, while you're not, rehabbing or practicing or whatever it may be. I mean, there were times around here, like to go back over to football, like Wes Welker would, or BJ Simmons way back in the day, they'd get, before the days of the old internet being what it is now and Twitter and all the social media stuff, they'd be walking around campus every day with a boot on. And then you'd see these people going, we're screwed. I mean, we're not. They're not playing this weekend, and then both of them are starting on a Saturday afternoon and throwing for or catching 200 yards worth of footballs or throwing for 500, whatever it may be. So I just don't know what Warren's situation is going to be here, and I do think Darion Williams will be just fine.
That's good to hear. There's no question about that, because you've got some other things that are obviously going to be things you want to be cautious about. And that is, overlooking an 11 seed, overlooking a team that wasn't even on an NCAA tournament list and could be now viewed as, I don't know, the hottest team in the United States of America. You might have taken in the ACC championship game over the weekend. It was a great one. And I got to apologize to the Wolfpack of NC State. I was not familiar with your game. Had no clue what you had going on this year. I mean, I'm still back in the Valvano days. I remember plenty of that, but didn't know if you were in, out, bubblicious, or just totally forgotten about. And then I see in 5 straight days a surge to an ACC championship and an NCAA tournament berth. And Chris, I don't know if you got to watch that title game or not, but when I'm watching it, I'm thinking, wait, this team couldn't make the NCAA tournament, because it seemed like they just had piece after piece after piece. Whether it was a guard that couldn't quit or a guy with a sweet touch built like a refrigerator and dancing like a ballerina. I mean, I'm thinking, yeah, these are all the pieces you'd love to have in a basketball team, man. How'd you feel about the Wolfpack when they showed up opposite Texas Tech, knowing what they had done last week?
I did watch, shockingly, I did watch most of this ACC title game. I was enthralled by the actual story. Like, there's no way they can upset North Carolina and steal a bid from somebody and win 5-5. There's just no way. And so, and then as they kept hanging in there or even had the lead, I'm more interested, because I want to see if they could pull off what I think is a minor miracle. I mean, that again, to localize it, that's Central Florida running through the Big 12 tournament, playing from Tuesday to Saturday. And I don't care what year it is. You beat Louisville, Virginia, freaking Duke, North Carolina, and Syracuse, okay, in any year. In 5 straight days, I'm like, that's just shocking.
Pretty salty.
Yes. And yes, Louisville was down this year. Yes, they needed a minor miracle. They looked buried against, I think it was Virginia. But I mean, Duke and North Carolina, this is like a 1 seed, and this is a 2 or 3 seed, I think, with Duke. And so anyway, but I did watch it, and I kid you not, after I watched it, I say I'm trying to explain the context to my wife, and I said, this is this is crazy. It's like these guys are exhausted. They're having to they're cramping up. They're limping off the deal. They can't even finish the game hardly. There's a guy that's made 2 points all year that just came in and tried to play some minutes because they can't get to the end, and then they start turning the ball over just out of exhaustion. And I said, it's a team that, it's crazy because they're going to make it in the tournament. It's a team that Texas Tech could play. And when we see the deal on the bracket pop up, she says, "You said that last night." And I'm like, unbelievable. And I feel like I'm very familiar with their whole deal because I watched that whole game and I was interested. But it's just wild. It is one of the hottest teams in the country. But they may be the tiredest, or maybe they expended all their energy because they were extremely average showing up to Washington, D.C. They had lost 7 of 9 going to DC and their conference tournament. And then all of a sudden it's like they flipped the switch. It's like, you know what? I think we'll play good ball from here on out. And they did.
That was just wild to see. It was a great game to watch. And I was having a hell of a time rooting for NC State. And I hate now that, I've got to root for the team that's going to bury this story, I hope, on Thursday night. But you saw, who was it? DJ Horn going, insane, unconscious. You saw his daddy in tears yelling in the stands, "That's my mother, his son." I'm like, who doesn't want to root for this? Who doesn't want to root for these guys? Well, everybody in Lubbock, Texas, and across the great state, I hope, is going to be rooting against these guys on Thursday night. But they will have America on their side, I would have to imagine. People want to see this kind of story continue, right? First, this week's March Madness bracket highlight brought to you by our friends at Nissan. Each week, we're picking one team that's standing out, a team that's pushed it further than the rest, just like any of the all-new 2024 Nissan SUVs. And these guys were able to take it to the next level. Today, it's the Red Raider opponent coming up Thursday, the NC State Wolfpack, obviously as the Nissan Rogue. They flipped the script and absolutely shocked the nation with a powerhouse run through the ACC tournament and into the big dance. They say, win life, go Rogue. And that's exactly what the Wolfpack did over the weekend. Take the Nissan Rogue, Nissan Pathfinder, or Nissan Armada and go find your next big adventure. Shop NissanUSA.com. Today's episode brought to you by Amazon's Fire TV, your destination for sports, from live games to highlights and beyond. Fire TV offers incredible viewing experiences with smart TVs, as well as the Fire TV stick, which you can just plug, boom, right into your existing television. And you got access to millions of movies and television episodes, as well as free and live TV. Whether it's opening weekend for baseball or the upcoming college basketball tournament, you're going to want to have a Fire TV. And that's not all. Fire TV recently created Fire TV channels to deliver a constant supply of the latest videos from all of your favorite sports brands, all for free. That includes all of us at Locked On and most of the big pro leagues and college conferences as well. So check out Fire TV channels on Fire TV or Alexa devices. And if you haven't done it already, you don't know what you're missing. Trust me on that. To learn more, visit Amazon.com/LockedOnFireTV. I would have to imagine people want to see this kind of story continue, right?
Yeah, I think I've seen a lot of both here. A lot of Texas Tech's got a tricky matchup. You go against a team that's got a lot of momentum, and momentum can be a funny thing. It can come and go, but when you have it, look out. And they certainly do right now. And they're believing in themselves, and it's like this confidence that they've. I did think you catch a bit of a break in that you're going to get them on a Thursday as opposed to, a Friday. It's one extra day. Maybe it means nothing, but the quicker you can play them, probably the better off you are. Although granted, you've got your own injury issues. I just think they were exhausted. DJ Horn wasn't even supposed to play, or he didn't play in the first game of that ACC tournament because he was injured. And he talked about that after the game. He's like, "Thank you so much for winning, just so I could get back into the, playing and all that stuff." Because they thought their season was about to end. Their season was, they were on the brink. And it's like I saw their head coach was on the hot seat. Their head coach was being talked about. Like, I don't know if Coach Keats, Kevin Keats is his name. Like, I don't know what the status is going to be here. And they go play five 1-game tournaments and win them all. Just absolute insanity. And this is one for the people that think conference tournaments don't mean anything. Don't tell NC State that, because or tell Iowa State that. But Yeah, I think it's an interesting matchup, but I also think that people have looked at it going, this is still a pretty average team compared to what we saw most of the year. They were 10th in the ACC. They were below 500. But again, scary opponent, and nothing's easy, man, in this tournament. Anybody trying to say, "Oh, it's a great matchup" or a terrible matchup, I don't buy any of it. They're all tough, man. If you don't like where you're seated or whatever, win more games. I mean, I don't know what to tell you either, too. But I think this one will be a wildly entertaining matchup. Yes, late into the evening on the East Coast on Thursday.
Yeah, let's make sure you get plenty of coffee in you on Thursday as we roll into that late tip. And yeah, I agree. I saw you making that point on Twitter in that it's all going to be difficult. So, moaning and groaning about this matchup, this draw or whatever you're in, we can be happy about that. Whereas some others are not. And everything is tough as far as doing great things. So I don't really know that, from a Texas Tech standpoint, I hate the draw at all. I don't know if you broke it down competitively, good, bad, indifferent, but from an entertainment or get on up kind of standpoint, I like it for Tech, because if something didn't get your attention in another kind of matchup, how could it not get your attention with this one, right? I mean, the nation's conference tournament darling, so to speak, is the one that you've got across from you. So I think from a motivational standpoint, I love it.
It's an easy sell to your kids. Not that you would have had a hard time, because like we've done the Eastern Kentucky thing. You've done one of those schools in Montana. Those are the scariest ones, just
the
because
Salukis of Southern Illinois.
Yes, I mean, and you try to tell your kids, hey, these boys can hoop, and it's like they don't. A lot of times, teams like that show up and they take care of business against those mid-majors. But other times, that's what makes the news on a Thursday or Friday night, when you're like, and we're all tuning in and just like they're bombs away, and it's like the crowd's going nuts, and the neutral fans in the crowd are kind of cheering for the underdog, and those are the scariest ones to me. But that's why I like this draw, because it's a Power 4, Power 5 school, and they have made a lot of news recently. So it's easy to show your kids, hey, look what they just did, fellas. I mean, you better strap it up, man. You better be ready to go and lace them up tight, because they just pulled off, again, what is a minor miracle when you're talking about, sports-wise. I mean, how would we have been sitting here talking about had Cincinnati, Oklahoma State, West Virginia, or Central Florida played on Tuesday in Kansas City and played all the way to Saturday and won it? I mean, like, in what frame would we be talking about that?
I mean, mind-boggling.
Yes, and that's what these dudes just pulled off. I mean, I guess technically the 10th seed, I think it was either Central Florida or Cincinnati, one of the two. I think maybe it was Central Florida, but that's it's like they would have been, if you would have looked at the equivalent of who you had to beat. I mean, and I think it would have been tougher in the Big 12 tournament. However, as I said, Duke, Carolina, Virginia. We all know Virginia's had some recent success in the NCAA tournament.
Yeah,
still frustrates me greatly. But the Qs and then Louisville's obviously really, really bad. But anyways, it's wild. But and it's funny, because you talk about draws and you start to look at it, and then you see all the people that are frustrated. I've seen Rick Pitino and Porter Mosier, and I've seen different people taking shots at the criteria and the metrics and all that stuff. I just wish this time of year, and even if Texas Tech were involved in this, you feel like maybe you have a case, this or that, just shut up and win. Everybody had all the games. You lost too many of them. Don't lose. You don't like where you got seated, or you don't like that you didn't make it in, or we're going to turn down the NIT because we're worried about recruiting for the safety of our players, whatever these excuses are. Win more games. I don't feel sorry for anybody. I mean, not a single one. You controlled your own destiny. You didn't win enough. The end. I mean, you didn't schedule tough enough in the non-conference. You botched it on your home court too many times. Whatever. I mean, it all comes down to not winning enough. And And if Texas Tech doesn't like being a 6 seed, they wanted to be a 5 seed or a 4 seed. I mean, don't lose to Cincinnati at home.
Yeah.
Don't lose to Villanova or Butler. I mean, it's all, not that anybody on your end is whining about anything, but I mean, it's just all the gnashing of teeth on Selection Sunday in the aftermath. It's just, I will say though, this was a year that it's perfect ammunition for them wanting to expand this thing by a little bit and to grow to 72 or 76.
I was going to say that crowd just gained a few more votes, I
agree.
sure, as obviously they were going to either way. It don't make it right, but probably still gained a few more votes. How did you feel specifically about the number that Texas Tech got? I know in our short we threw up on YouTube, the reaction video, check that out if you haven't. You said something to the effect of about right. What did you anticipate compared to what the reality turned out to be? First, today's episode brought to you by LinkedIn Jobs. And if you've got a small business looking to hire new employees, you're hoping for the biggest pool of top-tier candidates possible. And that's exactly why you got to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn has all the tools to help find the right professionals for your team faster and for free, all on one easy-to-use and secure platform. And LinkedIn isn't just another job board. They've got a far-reaching network of more than 1 billion professionals, and hiring the best becomes easy when you have that many qualified candidates. So easy that 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within only 24 hours. With all the hats you wear as a business owner, the time or resources to hire quality candidates can be hard to come by, but LinkedIn carries the load for you with the quick, easy, and intuitive process. So post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. That's linkedin.com/lockedoncollege to post your job for free today with LinkedIn Jobs. Terms and conditions apply. What did you anticipate compared to what the reality turned out to be?
I thought 5 or 6. I would have been surprised if it was anything lower than a 6. That was just the sweet spot. That was kind of where most had you. Your net falls. And again, you ultimately just don't know. And I don't think that they followed all that to a T. It's just a good barometer. I just thought a 7. And again, you benefited a bit in some ways by people stealing bids, like all this bid stealing that went on with your Oregons and Colorados. It kind of, in some ways, it bumps everybody up. I mean, like in BYU, everybody was frustrated with what BYU was, on a lot of the brackets, they were seated higher. Well, they got, I mean, they took the ultimate blow in some ways because they don't get to go to Salt Lake City. I mean, that was tailor-made for them to get into the second weekend of the tournament by playing home games, and the committee said, no, we're not doing that for you. So I thought it was about right. I was in some ways surprised that Oklahoma didn't make it, and that the Big 12 and the SEC – each had 8 bids. Oklahoma is the first team, and since they've been switching this system up and they've done the net, they're the first team in NCAA history that every loss that they had was a quad 1 loss. and they didn't make it. They were undefeated. They were undefeated in quad 2, quad 3, quad 4 games. I think in most years that probably gets you in. That's why I think they were legitimately maybe the last team out. And they played without 3 of their guys in Kansas City, but that's probably a tough pill for the folks in Norman to swallow. But
you can't spell out without OU.
Yeah.
I feel so bad for them, man. I'm just tore up inside. And I really am tore up. You couldn't screw Texas at the same time.
They would have. They were a team I had zero confidence in going to Kansas City. I would have had zero confidence in them in this tournament. So, I don't know, but it just pointing out some of because somebody has to be that team, that's right there on the fringe in the Big 12 conference that, was 1 game below 5. I think they were maybe 8 and 10 in conference play, I guess. So they were right there, not 9 and 9, but they were just below that, but they didn't make it. So anyway, file that one away because they, on paper, they had some good metrics, but they didn't have enough of those quad 1 wins. But I thought Texas Tech's draw was about right. You were overall seated, I think, 23rd. So you were one of the higher 6 seeds, if you will, or just one of the higher seeds just in general when you look at it from that standpoint. But you think about it like the way they just kind of snake it around. You're 23rd, and like that's still pretty rare air. And even though you're talking 5, 6 or whatever, because that's what. That's that 5, 6, 7 range. And I thought you just landed right there in the middle.
Well, and I know I'm not going to be the one, I don't guess, to look too far ahead, but man, the opportunity you have knocking at your door as far as the pathway through the tournament, not considering the opponent, obviously, as we've already touched on, arguably the hottest team in America, and then potentially, just the Kentucky Wildcats. Man, it's only Kentucky, right? I think is what they say. But around the corner, I mean, an opportunity to be back in the great state there in Dallas, where you've had a lot of fun in the NCAA tournament before.
Yeah, I don't, and we've probably buried the lead here, but that was the ultimate, I think, part of the bracket that you were most concerned with, I guess. That if you can survive the first weekend, boy, do you have a party on tap at the AAC in downtown Dallas. A potential game against like a Marquette, or you're just not real sure. And then obviously Houston would more than likely be there as well, but you'd love another crack at those guys. But just to get to Dallas and all that would come with that would be seemingly a lot of fun. And I'll just say this about Kentucky. You kind of think that they are this scary opponent because they are very talented. They're not really interested in playing defense a lot of the time. But Coach Cal, he hasn't been to the second weekend of the tournament since 2019. I think that was the last time. So it's been, 5 years, I guess, since they've advanced past the second weekend or advanced past the first weekend, I should say. So it's not like there's been a lot of recent NCAA tournament success for Big Blue Nation. So I don't know, man. You had to get somebody, and might as well get somebody else that's going to get your kids' attention.
Yeah.
And Kentucky will certainly do that.
No question about that. Let me give you something else to get your attention before we get out of here, something to marinate on. Throwing it up on the screen if you're watching on YouTube. Saw this on the broadcast as far as the selection show was concerned, and it was a win-loss record breakdown among the seedings: 16-1, 15-2, 14-3, 13-4, 12-5, 11-6, where you are 10-7, 9-8. Now, most obviously lopsided or a losing record for the lower seed. The 9-8 gets a little bit interesting, obviously, as that game typically is. But if you're looking on the screen, you'll notice there, historically, the 11 versus the 6, 58 and 94 is the record. So all time, obviously, the 6 has had it cooking. But since 2010, the 11 seed versus the 6 seed, 27 and 25. They got a winning record as underdogs, or at least the lower seeded team in that matchup, Chris. So just one more thing to think about as we're getting ready for this one on Thursday.
Yeah, and and obviously I think Texas Tech and BYU are 2 of these 6s this year. I think I remember that the games in Dayton are usually like 2 11s going at it to try to be the real 11 seed that advances. And I think that this year they're the 10 seeds. But my point of bringing that up is a lot of times those teams that win in Dayton with that on that 11 line, they've won a game every year for I don't know how many years in a row it is. And that probably factors into to some of these numbers. But this is also points to the fact that there's not any gimmies, man. There's not any good draws or bad draws. You're like a 5.5 point favorite, and NC State's probably looking at it going, well, hell, I mean, we were the underdog for 4 or 5 straight days there in DC. So, it's just more of the same.
Right.
But any 11 beating a 6, these aren't really upsets. That's just that's the beauty of this sporting event. That's why Thursday and Friday should be holidays nationally. Ain't nobody getting any work done because you're sitting at home rooting for Cinderella. I mean that's the way it works. But these aren't these aren't necessarily games that are going to like get people to turn heads from an upset standpoint. I mean, NC State beating Texas Tech or Duquesne beating a BYU or whatever it may be, it's not going to be like, oh my gosh, that is wild. No, happens every year, as we're seeing about half the time in about the last 15 years. So, yeah, the Red Raiders will certainly be on high alert, but you were going to be no matter who you were playing.
Yeah, I hope you got your PTO and alibi ducks in a row for Thursday and Friday, as I've already suggested. You know, if you've been following Locked On Texas Tech closely, we appreciate that. But you may know that I've got a new little baby on the ground, and was talking to my wife a couple of weeks ago about, you know, maternity leave and things like that. And man, I bet you're really looking forward to having this maternity leave. I kid you not. This is one of the reasons I knew very early on she was a keeper. I think the first bullet point she hit was, I'm so glad to have maternity leave during March Madness. Nobody will be bothering me in my office while I'm trying to watch basketball on Thursday and Friday. So I'm just hoping she remembers there's a baby in the house whenever we get things tipped off on Thursday and Friday. But, man, one of the greatest weeks of the sporting year. There's no doubt about that. I can't wait to get down to the nitty-gritty. We will have our investigative reporters on the scene to keep a very, very close eye this week on any further boot shuffling. So stay tuned for that as we get closer to Thursday, and a whole lot to get into, including on tomorrow's show. I want to get into something you touched on there. We'll touch on today briefly, but we'll dive into what has been some reaction to some noses turned up at an NIT invitation or other postseason opportunities. So we'll get into that coming up tomorrow, and of course, continue to get ready for the Red Raiders and the Wolfpack. Looking forward to it, Chris. Appreciate the time as always, man. Enjoyed it.
Yeah, we need to come up with one of these, you know, like work excuse notes that people out there, like, you know, sign it, Casey and Chris, you know, and have these people fill in the blanks on some of the reasoning. But
glad to do it.
We want to allow everybody to, because technically you don't even need like necessarily Thursday off, although it'd be great. You really need like Friday off because it's going to be a late night on Thursday, you know, depending on the tip times. Yeah. Maybe you know, partake a little bit, or you know,
I'm already feeling thirsty.
Yeah, that's right. But yeah, man, enjoyed it. Fun time of year. I'll be headed to Pittsburgh here pretty quick, and it's about 45 minutes away from Morgantown, give or take. And so, you know, I feel like we were just there, and we were successful up in that little neck of the woods. So. Enjoy the week, people. It's a fun week, man, and the madness is here, like Cowan said, and keep hope alive. And spring football starts this week too, so
that's right.
That is some goodness right there. Our worlds are colliding.
Magical March. There's no doubt about it. Any way you slice it here on Locked On Texas Tech. So we appreciate you guys being out there, and hope you'll get subscribed if you're not already, so you never miss an episode on YouTube or anywhere you get podcasts. For Chris, I'm Casey, and we hope to see you back for the next round on Locked On Texas Tech.